Okay, so I have done some research into stock characters in pantomime, specifically the Principal Girl, which is what Rose would come under. So examples of Principal Girls in pantomimes would be like Snow White, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Jill from Jack and the Beanstalk. So Principal Girls are usually the sensible characters who normally will face a threat from the bad character, the baddie in the pantomime. Um, Rose doesn't necessarily face a threat so much directly from the baddie, but she is part of this threat for both the Beast and Bountiful, because Bountiful is forced to send his daughter. He's losing his daughter. He then gets ill, but then the Beast has this curse and needs to find a true love to reverse this curse, and she is indirectly related to the threats that the baddie proposes. The Principal Girl typically falls in love with the principal role, which is what happens in our pantomime. Rose ends up falling for the Beast. I often find myself that Principal Girl roles are quite mundane, quite boring to play, because they're so stereotypical. They can tend to be quite drippy and naive, and do tend to lack depth of character. They're very one-dimensional. But with our pantomime, I find that Rose isn't really written or could be played like that. She's very two-dimensional. She's got this thick skin, and she can hold her own, but she relentlessly cares for people. She will always put other people first, and she won't rest until people are looked after or people's needs are taken care of. So it's quite an opposite to a typical Principal Girl, but I like playing that kind of character rather than the drippy, mundane, one-dimensional girl. I find it really more interesting to explore those kind of two sides to her and how that can be played, but also the challenge of keeping that light, sweet kindness to her whilst having that tougher skin. I feel like she is more mature in terms of like describing the difference between a stereotypical principal role and Rose. The stereotypical principal role, you could think of it more as like a child, whereas Rose is like an adult. The stereotypical principal role has those one-dimensional things. They lack depth. They've got this naivety about them, but Rose is rather intelligent. She doesn't fall for ridiculous things. She thinks, she uses her brain. She's smart. She's really caring. So she's more of an adult. She's more mature than the stereotypical Principal Girl role. And physically, Principal Girls are very graceful. They're very light and courtly. They've got a lot of elegance. They kind of brighten up a space they walk into. So it's very important to get that right. The second I walk on stage, I need to be poised and graceful, because not with just my dialogue, with my physicality and my posture, I need to engage the audience, and for the audience to really be invested in me and wanting me to succeed and to really be on my side. So getting the walk right will be very important. Getting mannerisms right will also be very important. So I'm going to need to work on my posture and discover how Rose will walk. I think that will come as soon as I put my character shoes on, which is probably what I'll be wearing for the show. And also, it sounds silly, but how she stands, if she stood still, I feel like to get that more elegant, she'd probably be stood in like a more ballet-esque position, like a first or a second position. I did that when I played the Principal Girl in another pantomime. I played Cinderella in an adult adaptation of Cinderella, and I'm not a very feminine girl with the way I stand and the way I walk. So I was given the feedback to try standing in first position to help with my poise and my posture, and last year for Panto, to work on my posture, I walked around with a book on my head and also stood flat against the wall. So I think I'll start doing that again this year, just to help with that. And I think as soon as that is fixed, the characterisation will then go up a level, because I think you need the basics first before you can work on the characterisation, because the characterisation could be there, but if you're walking on slouched or you just shuffle on stage, it just makes the performance look really weak. So in terms of traditional stock pantomime characters, there are some similarities between Rose and the principal girl role, but there are some differences which I find really nice to explore. And from doing this research, there's definitely things that I need to look into to create this character of Rose, which is what I'm going to do next.